Hello everyone and welcome to Helix Plays Games. My name is Richie and joining me this week is @CyberChris2077, Mr. Chris.
Hello everyone.
Hello Mr. Chris. And coming back is the chaotic neutral @Mr. Rob.
I am back.
He's back. Haven't got too much work on this week?
No,
or are you just ignoring, or are you just not doing it?
Oh, well, I'm just quietly there's always an exchange between how much work you do and then how much stress you take on not doing the work, and I'm just deciding to let the stress and anxiety win out on this one. So no, all good.
I know that pain.
Did you miss me? That's the key question.
We did. Did you miss him, Chris? Oh, well, I missed you, Chris, not so much.
Okay,
anyway, we've got a great show lined up for you this week, where we'll be discussing, is Game Pass coming to Nintendo, our first impressions of Atomic Heart, and what's coming up in March for Xbox. All that and much, much more on this week's XPass. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel or your podcast feed of choice with notifications switched on so you're kept in the loop here with all of our great content at Helix Plays Games, such as Talking the PS, where every single Tuesday we break down all the PlayStation news. We've just had a state of play, so we've got some exciting news to talk to you about tomorrow. We also have the Clickercast, which is usually every single Tuesday. However, for scheduling reasons, it will be Wednesday at 8 PM GMT this week. We hope to see you in the live chat for that one. We also have our weekly live streams where Chris and I this week will be finishing up our first ever full playthrough of Halo Combat Evolved.
We will finish this fight, Richie, which I'm sure is like a motto from the game, but I'm yet to hear it in the game. So I'm gonna keep
it's
saying
in all the adverts, and then 2 years later, another fight began naturally. So.
It's one of those perpetual
Arguably,
fighting.
from what I've heard, a better fight.
Mm-hmm.
Halo 2, from my mind, is kind of where I remember the hype of the series being. But
yeah, definitely.
I'm having fun though. I'm looking forward to rounding out
Same.
our story, our adventure.
Yeah, and I was saying in our Discord the other day, we'll finish up Halo Combat Evolved. Then I think we'll go back to maybe playing some more community-focused games the next few weeks, and we'll consider playing Halo 2 at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Combat will evolve.
Evolve again. But
hopefully with some more weapons.
Yeah, but before we get into it, Chris, other than Atomic Heart, because we'll get to that in the news section, been playing anything interesting?
A little bit of Hogwarts Legacy that I've managed to squeeze in there. Atomic Heart predominantly. And that's all I've managed this week. I've been so busy. It's insane. I've done a lot of reorganizing of games, but I've not played them. Actually, I just remembered I did go through, because I've been off this week from work. I did have my brother around, and we did do an absolute nostalgia trip on James Bond games randomly. I think off the back of GoldenEye, we played through Tomorrow Never Dies on PS1, The World's Not Enough on PS1, 007 Racing. Terrible game. It's not hold up at all. It's so bad. Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, and then we had to busy ourselves. So we didn't get to the PS3 games, but I think I mentioned on one of the other shows, I went on kind of an eBay spurt and acquired every James Bond game you could possibly imagine. So we need to do something at some point, because I've got Bloodstone, 007 Legends. I've got everything you could imagine.
Was Tomorrow Never Dies where you get that little scene where you're in the jet and it just kind of spins around and you destroy everything? Is that I really like that one. That one doesn't get enough attention, I don't think.
Their merits, their up and down merits of talking about Pierce Brosnan's likeness and how it ties in with the movie, and some of the choices are quite funny. But yeah, we had a really good time with it. So I have been playing snippets of older games as well, and I'd love to do something for the channel at some point. But yeah, I went out and bought pretty much every Bond game you could imagine I now own. Just in case.
I don't really have any nostalgia for the Bond games outside of GoldenEye 007 and the N64, because I had a PS2. I didn't have a PS1, but I didn't have that many games. I don't think I had any of the Bond games on PS2. And we're talking an era where you'd have to rely on birthdays and Christmases to get games. So you considering my birthday is in November, I pretty much spent all year not getting any games. But I was also at an N64 at the time. I was more into my N64 than my PS2. So it's just, I just never really got them. And then I didn't have a PS3, so that entire like back catalogue, like I didn't play Uncharted until my PS4. Like,
yeah, that's a bit crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, because I just didn't have one. Like, I might have played it in bits around one of yours or something, but never like.
Yeah, in terms of consistency, yeah.
Yeah, I even bought From Russia with Love on the PS2, which is like, I don't even remember. I think I remember this being discussed in magazines.
You're one of like 4 people who bought that game, I think.
It's weird because it's Bond though. I feel like there's
it's
also
a movie
some
tie-in game for a movie that probably came out about 30 years before the PS2.
With a lot of the Bond games though, what I'm realising when I was looking around on eBay and stuff is you can't buy them online. So they're video games that you won't be able to acquire digitally. So as we lean into this digital world where it's like a 70-30 split now, if you want to play any of those games, you cannot buy them digitally. So I'm happy to have them. As a fan of the franchise and a fan of James Bond, and because some of them have got such nostalgia for me. And like I just know for a fact if we got around and had some beers and just worked our way through these games, we'd have such a laugh with them. Because they're of a time and a place, of course, but at the same time, watching movie licensing and image likeness tussle with being a video game and a movie tie-in and not, and trying to push the boundaries of what GoldenEye was, but then how Tomorrow Never Dies is so much worse than GoldenEye, even though it came out later. It baffles. But yeah, that aside, Atomic Heart as well, I also checked out.
Yeah. Rob?
Lots and lots of Hogwarts Legacy. That's the only thing I've actually touched in terms of games. Got my broom riding, broom riding, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I got them trials done. Got some on the edge again, some like the spicy spells which you're not supposed to use, but I'm gonna
have
use.
you? I haven't got any of them yet.
Well, yeah, I've nearly got one. There's a wronger who teaches you them all. So.
I haven't got any of them. I haven't even got a broom yet. I mean,
Well,
not even for sweeping, let alone flying.
I think
the broom is class.
You say tomorrow
like, it really,
and talking
gets you.
Yeah, you say tomorrow and then talking to PS, Rob, how your girlfriend kind of played things a bit. She said she plays things a bit out of order, where she was almost like over level when it came to story. I done the exact same thing. When I unlocked the talent tree, I was already level 20.
Yeah. So you've been hitting the side quests a lot, right?
But I wasn't. I was like, there's not actually that many side quests that you have access to that early in the game. There's a few, but it's just the exploration. You're getting so much for just exploring the castle, which is what I just kind of, one of the things that I fell in love with that game on. Because you just, so what's around this corner? Every time you got a new spell, so you have to have another tour of the castle, see what things you've missed.
Yeah, I think I'm level 15. And I've only done exploration pretty much. Yeah,
like the levels go up so quickly. My girlfriend's actually playing her second character downstairs as we record this. So she's done a good guy Slytherin playthrough, and now she's doing like good an evil Slytherin. Gryffindor.
Oh, she's doing it to break the stereotypes.
No, not really. She just likes Slytherin, and then she thought like, nobody wants to be Hufflepuff. Like, let's be honest. And then I was Ravenclaw, so
I'm Ravenclaw as well.
I'm Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
Hey, how did that happen?
Ravenclaw's the best.
Because the game
these
does give you that
story
option.
Differences between which you get.
Because the game gives you the option to opt out, doesn't it? When it puts you in the house and then goes,
yeah.
What are you? Are you sure you want to be this? We take into consideration your thought process, which is basically like, look, if you don't want to be fucking Hufflepuff, pick something different. This is your choice now.
Like the Hufflepuff opt-out clause.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that we all end up being Ravenclaw. Interesting.
Yeah. There's probably
read into that what you will, Potter fans.
Yeah. We're all nerds, basically.
Yeah, straight up nerds. Yeah. But I think if I was in that world, as like suddenly as like a 12-year-old or something, however old you are when you get your letter, and suddenly, there's wizards. I think I would want to be like straight up Ravenclaw, because I'd want to know everything I could about that world. And let's be fair, Slytherins are evil, Hufflepuff are boring, and Gryffindor just seem to charge headfirst into the fight and probably get killed realistically, unless you're the chosen one.
R.I.P. Cedric.
Or Neville. Neville's cool. But yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's all for that. Would you like to introduce us to the
excellently exuberant excavated Xbox expose, aka The news.
The news. And as always, our news section is brought to you by our Helix Heroes, where you can join for as little as 99p, which gives you early access to some of our shows, custom emojis, and so much more. Chris, Atomic Heart, you've been playing it. Give me your impressions.
I have. It was one that was on my radar for quite some time with its Bioshock influences, and I made a point of doing a first look, getting it up on the channel. I did it at like 1 o'clock in the morning this week. I was going to do it live, but I thought I'll just do it pre-recorded because I'm that tired. I'll just get it in the bag anyway. So there's a couple of puzzles within the game that I get stuck on. I don't know whether it's just because I'm tired or they're genuinely difficult, and I'm just thinking, all right, get through this. But in terms of the gameplay itself, it's as expected. It's Soviet Union basically were the first to the hydrogen cell, hydrogen bomb stuff, which kind of spurred on this technological innovation similar to what we see in kind of like dystopian alternate history futures and stuff, where they then have like powered machines and stuff, all powered differently, and like steampunk-esque almost. You start off in here, you're an agent working for the government seemingly, and it's straight up just copies from Bioshock almost, like cities, everyone, there's android robot things everywhere, drones flying around, and the story kind of unravels. Something's up, something's wrong, and you get kind of dropped into the middle of this adventure. And it's terrific. The biggest thing aside from the cool world, graphically looks gorgeous. Gameplay wise, so fun already. You have like these little tendril things that come on your hand, like The Last of Us, but they're robotic. And that's how you get essentially your Bioshock powers from there. You have like mechanical attachments that give you powers. But clearing the rooms looking for loot, you hold in kind of RB, and it kind of magnetizes and sucks everything up in the room. So you go around almost like Luigi Mansion style with a Hoover and just collect things. So rather than going individual drawers one for one, you just and everything sticks to your hand. Really cool, which is fun, very satisfying to clean up a room that way. I do wish it was a real life thing I could buy and just stick on my hand and go, oh, I need to pick up my keys on my phone and just zoom straight to my hand. Aside from that, weapons are quite fun. I'd imagine they're going to get better as the game goes on. I only played for about an hour and 15. But yeah, love the world they've created. I love the kind of the sense of this just the alternate history thing. Obviously, the game does come with some element of controversy because the studio that made the game is based in Russia. I don't go into it in the first look, just like we won't here on the podcast because we're here for games, but I did put a link in the video for donations to the war in Ukraine crisis help, if anyone's looking to donate or anything like that. But the game's fun, the game's great, and again, I don't believe the developers or anything work on it. They can't say anything even if they wanted to by proxy of where they work, so whether they're for or against, it's a moot point because they can't really speak up or do anything otherwise. So enjoy the game for what it is. These people in it to make games, they're artists, they're story writers, directors, all that kind of jazz. So it's video games, folks. If you want that kind of news, and there's plenty of outlets that cover all of it in depth, more than we ever will on here. But in terms of the game, had a great time with it. Certainly be playing more. And if you like Bioshock, you'll love this, as far as I can see.
I've got to ask, because I've read a few reviews for this, and one of the themes that keeps coming up is the main character is annoying. Did you find that at all?
Not in the first look. He's got some very generic lines. He is your atypical like PS3 era protagonist, but you don't really see him. You hear him talk quite a lot, but you've got a little AI voice in your head, kind of similar to like Jarvis and Iron Man, talking to you along the way. You meet some interesting, fun characters in the first few hours. One of the things that I was surprised by, I don't want to spoil it because you should definitely go check out the first look, but the skill tree for your weapon upgrades, you do them all at a fridge, essentially, like a 1950s style Smeg fridge. And the fridge is very sentient, but also very sexualized, which I did not expect.
It's a sexy fridge.
And I'm telling you, it's a sexy fridge, and this sexy fridge goes hard on the flirting. And it caught right. If you just wanted to see that, go and watch the last 5 or so minutes of the first look, because that's when I get to the skill tree point. And this fridge helps you out with your upgrades and your weapon choices and stuff. But this fridge goes hard on like basically for you, and it's kind of disturbing. But at least I appreciate how the development team committed to this bit. But it was very odd at the end.
I don't know how I would react to a fridge flirting with me. Like it's...
No, I really didn't at all. And it's not talking like she says like some very explicit things about what she wants you to do to her and everything. But it was a choice, and they committed to it for the skill tree. And yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I just don't know where this game sits, because I'm seeing like a lot of like the review scores are all over the place in this thing. There's like nines out of tens from some outlets. Some like IGN gives it an 8, but then Twinfinite gives it a 4. Like, and
I mean,
none of this is like paying attention to anything. The political side, they're always focusing on things like mainly the story and gameplay, and like they feel like the user scores. I haven't dug into them. There might be. I'd imagine there's more like political stuff in there.
Well,
this is where I'd say seems mixed as well.
This is where I'd say just use your own sensibilities. Like, look at Hogwarts Legacy. That also comes with some different outside elements to it as well. And like Wired was it Wired who gave it a 1? We said last week's show a 1, which the review's just an absolute joke because it's nothing to do with the actual gameplay itself. And Atomic Heart possibly suffers from that as well, but you never really know. So what I'd say is if you're that concerned on it, don't play it. If you think it interests you, it's a video game at the end of the day. Just go play it, check it out, make your own assumptions. But if you're a fan of Bioshock, if you like first-person shooters, the game looks gorgeous and it's free on Game Pass. You don't even have to pay for it if you don't want to. Like you're not giving any money to anyone by not on playing it if you've got Game Pass. So it's already paid for by Microsoft. So it's on their head, whatever things you might think about the political side of things. So just enjoy games for what they are.
I suppose it's that advantage of it being on Game Pass where it's getting mixed reviews, but some of it's not mixed as in like 8 to 6 or 7. Some people are going, it's an 8 or 9, you should play this game, and others are going like it's a 4 or 5, you shouldn't play this game. With being on Game Pass, you have the opportunity to just go, you know what, I like the sound of the setting, I like Bioshock style games, I'm just going to give it a punt, and there's nothing to lose if you have Game Pass.
Absolutely. Bioshock, Wolfenstein as well, it's very heavily influenced on that front. Obviously, you swapped out Nazis for Soviet Union people instead. Well, I'd say if it was for you two, I'd say definitely recommend checking out. I think you'd both enjoy it. If it's for our audience, if they've been listening for a long time, they know our sensibilities of what we're into, I think it's worth a punt just to see what you like about it. And if it's on Game Pass, then you've not lost anything if you played an hour or two and go, not for me.
Yeah, but it's an hour or so you could be playing Hogwarts Legacy.
You could.
But anyway, let's move on. Unless, Rob, you got anything to add?
No, I think I'll have a look at it. Where it sits in the queue of all the other stuff I need to get through on like the subscription platforms which are dropping, I don't know, but I will look into it.
All right, moving on to probably the biggest news story of the week. Microsoft has signed a 10-year binding contract with Nintendo and some others as well, such as NVidia, to bring Xbox and Activision games to the Switch and GeForce Now. Big drop there.
On the same day they had their hearing, right? I seem to remember.
But I mean, we've already covered that they were in talks, but these contracts are now signed. There was a joint statement from Microsoft and Nintendo. Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity. So this is not going to be a smaller version to suit the Switch. This is the full-on experience. So they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. And that's a joint statement from Microsoft and Nintendo.
This is before the deal's been secured as well. I have to hasten to add.
Yeah, we said this earlier on, didn't we? When this obviously this has been getting dragged on for months now, but I can't comprehend how they can talk about making deals when they don't own Call of Duty.
Well, I think for me, the way I look at this is, if I was in their Microsoft stance, I would have done the exact same move, because it's one thing saying, yeah, we're going to bring it to these other platforms. We're not going to make it an Xbox exclusive. Now they've got that in signed contract, so if this deal goes through, this contract is now activated. They have to do it. Where I guess it's not a promise anymore; it's a legally binding contract.
Yeah, I guess there's two players to it, isn't there? There's sometimes benefits to acting the way act within the way you want the decision to go. So it's if you act like this is already a done deal, it can be more likely that the deal does get done. And then secondly, as you say, Richie, it could just be a bit of a strengthening of position to say
putting the money where the mouth is in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you must be really pissed off if you're the head of the I can't remember. Is it the European Commission, I think, or something?
The European
CMA.
Commission, the UK have kind of blocking it as well. There's a lot of different things going on.
They're all just like the head of those commissions just sat there. It's like, oh, what the hell? Like, does my opinion not matter anymore?
Well, this might relieve their fears. Like, it's now a binding contract. They've offered this same deal to PlayStation as well.
I'm just baffled how they can like actively put out a statement that features the words Call of Duty like 3 or 4 times. They don't own the IP of Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Like it's like, should this not be done behind the scenes?
They're trying to manifest it to be done.
Because like them saying it publicly is kind of like, is it outside influence? Then like you know when you go to court and you've got your jury, they're not allowed outside in the public in case they're influenced by outside things. This is literally Microsoft going, we've made a legal binding contract with Nintendo talking about a franchise and an IP in the future of a video game that we don't own. Like, it's so crazy. It's like, could you imagine Nintendo coming out and going, oh, The Last of Us, we've made a deal to bring The Last of Us to Switch. It's like, you don't own The Last of Us, Nintendo. You can't just go swinging that round.
That is different, massively different scenario, though, because there is a deal that is agreed between Activision and Microsoft. That deal exists. It just hasn't been ratified by the regulatory authorities. So Activision Blizzard King are 100% fine with the statement going out because they want this deal to go through. So that's why they're able to do it. So they're not breaching any like.
Oh, I'm not saying they're breaching. I just think it's an odd business practice to talk about something that, like, if they turn around and go, "You're not allowed to do it. It's in breach of X, Y, Z. Sorry." It's like, well, why are we talking about it?
They're putting pressure on the regulators. That's what they're doing.
But it's really ballsy from like an Activision perspective, because what if the deal doesn't go through and then Nintendo are like, well, what the hell? Like, we want these titles, and they make a really like potential like a really worse deal for Activision to fulfill.
You promised us.
You'd imagine that's been discussed. You'd imagine there'll be
clauses.
If I was Microsoft, I'm sitting around the table with Nintendo, and you're talking about, you would bring up a significant part of the discussion about, if the deal doesn't go through, what does that mean for this deal? And the fact that this is Microsoft Nintendo and not Activision Nintendo, to me suggests that this is only valid. I might be wrong, I haven't read the full contract, but I would suggest
really?
that...
You've not had access to the full legal contract?
Send you a copy, Richie.
I would think that this deal is only valid if the deal goes through, because this is a contract between Microsoft and Nintendo, and Microsoft and NVIDIA.
Yeah, I don't like it personally.
It does feel weird. Aside from all the legality stuff, how the hell are they expecting Call of Duty to run on the Nintendo Switch? Like, that thing's it must be, right? Like Xbox Cloud Gaming.
They don't say the Switch.
That's true. They just say Nintendo. I mean, by the time they got it into development, the Switch should be, you'd like to think, long in the rearview mirror by the time this actually materializes into a game developed and published. You're talking a good couple of years at least.
The Witcher 3 runs okay on the Switch.
But that's old-ass game.
But I know Call of Duty's are newer games, but they're very well optimized games. Like, Doom Eternal pretty much runs on a potato because it's that well optimized. So they might just work. You're not going to get the same sort of quality, but if you can get like reasonable 1080p graphic settings at 30 frames per second on the Switch, it's not outlandish.
But isn't Call of Duty like 80 gig minimum as well? So then,
if you're toning down the graphical quality, you can save yourself a lot of space.
I think it'd have to be cloud.
I think cloud, yeah.
But it's an odd one to go with Nintendo, because obviously Nintendo have a lot of weight right now because of the sales. The sales speak for themselves, don't they? If Nintendo Switch had only sold 20 million, I don't think this deal would even be discussed, because it wouldn't have the impact. It's the fact that it's Microsoft showing they're willing to play with a user base of like tens of millions of players to go back to those regulators and say, look, we're literally saying you can have it on a platform that's triple the size of our own right now. How is that not playing nice?
It's prestige
with this IP.
If you look at the 3 biggest players in the gaming industry are Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Sony are holding out; they've got the other one, and then you get the other things like NVidia have been the massive in video games, especially because they make most of the GPUs out in your PCs, and I think AMD do stuff as well. But like Nintendo is one of them. Nintendo, everyone knows Nintendo, even if you don't know video games at all. So to see that this deal is in place between Microsoft and Nintendo, if you're a regulator who's been brought into this, you're not a gamer. This whole deal is about trying to get the thing through. And it is, for me, just Microsoft. Yeah, maybe you could argue they're jumping the gun, but it is about them just putting the money where their mouth is, really. It's like, we said we'll do it, we're doing it. Like, this is no longer a promise. And if you're on the fence, if you're a regulator part of one of the people making the decision and you're on the fence, that might push you over. Go, you know what? They've got legally binding contracts. Other big players in the industry are okay with this deal occurring.
Yep. There's a point, isn't there, where, like, and again, I can't wait for it, but like, if this deal does go through, and they're saying a couple of tweets and posts about my Xbox games to Nintendo gamers coming across, like, I think this is paving the way for Game Pass and cloud gaming to be on the Switch.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And then long term, we've theorized before, like, will PlayStation have an Xbox Game Pass app? And this is Microsoft's whole deal. Like, I don't think Microsoft, even though they own the studios, I don't think they're that interested in making games as much anymore. I think they've all, like, traditionally Microsoft has always been about just the hardware and the software. And Xbox has been a phenomenal element of the pillar of their business, and it always will be. But there is part of me which is like, they're just happy to play ball and be anywhere and everywhere they possibly can. And this is the deal, and as much as they're pushing this to show that they are willing to, like, Xbox can be anywhere. Call of Duty, we want it to be everywhere. Look, NVIDIA in the cloud through 4080, whatever, on the Switch, like, we want it to be there. It does paint a good future for us as consumers where, like, yeah, I would much rather than play Hi-Fi Rush on my phone using a Razer Kishi. I'd much rather play it on my Switch.
Yeah.
But I just can't do that right now because Nintendo don't put out those type of games. But give me it. I'm down for it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if the next generation of Switch had a better hardware and including a better Wi-Fi card, and I could get Game Pass on that, then the idea of using my phone and Kishi, because I've never really been sold on the form factor of my phone as a gaming thing, I think the screen's a bit too much, where the Switch seems to be that nice right size as a handheld console with the screen size, that then my Switch 2 would become this, like, awesome, like, Nintendo first party plus portable gaming device, which is why I'd like it to be. That would be the ideal. I mean, it does get onto the fact that I've said before is, will there be another Xbox? And Microsoft have kind of suggested questioning whether gaming consoles will still be around in 10 years. I think they're starting to see themselves as not almost like console as a subscription model with Game Pass, and eventually you won't have an Xbox. I think that's where they see the future.
Well, we've seen it in Phil Spencer's kind of broad statements that he made a few years ago when xCloud was announced and stuff. Like, it's the ecosystem. Like, Microsoft provide the service, and if you go and buy a PC with Windows on, or you go buy a Series X, S, or whatever the future is, with the content on, or you play it on your phone in the cloud, or you play through NVIDIA, or your Nintendo Switch, all the way, the threadbare through all them is that you have a Game Pass subscription for $12 a month. Like, that's their money. Like, that's their income that they can get, regardless of where you're playing at. As long as it's not on PlayStation, you're getting some element of it. And even on PlayStation, you've got like, they own Minecraft, and that's over on there with 3 titles and such. So it's, yeah, I think they're just happy to play ball. Even though I can understand the cynicism from Sony's side, and I do still believe that Sony pushing back on this so hard is just delay tactics so they can get their ducks in order to make a first-person shooter or make a deal with EA or whatever they need to do to combat it. But if they can keep Call of Duty for like another decade or so, then the gaming scene will be very, very different come then, and we might not have consoles, like you said, Richie. It might just all be cloud-based things with little additions if you want them.
Microsoft seem ready to step out of the console wars and just go, you know what we're going to do? Our first-party titles are there to sell Game Pass. We don't care where you're playing, as long as you've got paying for Game Pass.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I personally love not to have a console. Like, that's my ideal situation. The only reason I've went back to hardware is because I've had to, because the cloud service, like gaming service, isn't quite there yet. But 10 years time, like, I mean, how many people do you know that have a Blu-ray player?
Not
I think my dad might still have one, but it's a still has one rather than
Are you
It's
planning
not a
to
new
buy a
thing.
Blu-ray player in the future, or
Nope.
no? Right, like it's not a thing.
I have one.
And
It's on the shelf behind me.
well, yeah, because but would you have bought I don't think many people will buy a separate Blu-ray player now because it's
No.
streaming is like well and truly took
Well,
over.
actually, there is some people that do. If you want, like, because the best like kind of quality you can get movies on is kind of like 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, rather than streaming services. So if you're a massive cinephile, there is a market there, but it's now enthusiast gear rather than common around the house. Everyone has one stuff.
Yeah, and I do think consoles will go the same way. Like you'll always have like the ultra hardcore kind of section that kind of needs to have those like milliseconds more of like whatever, but
Esports gamers and stuff where the latency, like I'm one of the best people at Call of Duty in the world. I can notice the latency where average gamer can't.
yeah,
I think it just comes more down to just the nature of it. Like at the moment, casual gamers don't generally invest in like a massive top-end PC because it's just too confusing. Like I can't be installing drivers and doing all this shit and that. I was like, I just want to buy a box and play FIFA. I just want to buy a box and play Hogwarts Legacy. Like your girlfriend Rob, you said she's put like an entire lifetime into Hogwarts Legacy. She's not going out and buying a PC to do that. It's just like I get a PS5, I get the disc, I put it in. The game is there in relatively ease of use. In the future, like they'll always exist because the market for just ease of access is there. Like kids, you can't expect a kid to set up a PC and start doing all this stuff. But
will it just be a streaming box that you put in? It
that's it.
It won't
They just
be a
need to-
console as we see it with the hardware in. It could
they
just be
need
like
to bridge that gap.
like a streaming
And think-
stick, like a Chromecast, and then top end gaming will be PCs because PCs I don't think are going anywhere.
yeah.
No.
And think over the past 10 to 15 years, which has been the biggest sector of gaming, which has exploded, and it's mobile gaming where you didn't need to buy another piece of hardware to do it. You just downloaded an app where you match candies or some
It's
shit.
just there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, kids who've grown up with mobile gaming as the norm will eventually see when they're our age a massive change in the gaming industry.
Yeah. What do you mean I need to pay £500 for a box?
Yeah, you're kidding me.
It's like, no, I get it on my phone for 99p or free in a subscription, and that's
why do
what
we
it's
need
leaning
this
into.
thing to press buttons on? Why can't I just press buttons on the screen?
Yeah. Like,
So I think Microsoft are definitely in it for the long term, and they're kind of scoping for the longevity rather than the short. Like, let's face it, they lost the last generation, like hands down.
Yeah.
Like they came rock
They're losing
bottom.
this one.
That too. Even with all the good movements, and I think you saying, Richie, like they're willing to pivot and focus more on just the bigger picture, and I think they have to. By proxy of being bottom, like the underdog always has to do more to come out on top. And they have the money and the capital, evidently swinging their big 68 billion around to acquire these companies. Like they have a goal in mind, and they're ready to eat the cost for a good 10 plus years because they can forecast and see that this is where it's going to. So it's an interesting journey that we're all a part of.
Sure where it's going. I think that's part of the point. They're hedging the bets. It's like, well, we can stay involved in the traditional console market at the moment with the Series X and Series S, but then by putting money into xCloud, Xbox Cloud Gaming, if you prefer, by its actual title, which is not as good, and GamePass, if the whole concept of a console, a £500, £600 box in the living room goes away, we're set. Not only are we set, we are now the market leaders. You could argue at the moment cloud gaming is pretty much boiled down to, as it stands, GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming.
Yeah.
There's some other people involved in the market. There's new players still entering the market. Luna is still a thing in the US, but in terms of what is on offer, it's Microsoft or NVIDIA are your choices, really.
Yeah. Absolutely, and this is where they've got enough money in the bank to do. Like these companies are too big to fail almost now. Like the way the world's changed in the last 10 years, we saw Google couldn't even get into this marketplace with their money. Like, yes, it was a piss poor effort, but like Amazon Luna, we don't know what they're doing, and that's Amazon money. Like all these little startup companies, like let's face it, they're not going to go mainstream. They're not going to supplant Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony at all. Like no matter how much they try, if Google with all their millions and Amazon with all their millions can't do it, there is no one else catching these three. And I think it's just this is the future we're in for, where these three perpetually, even Microsoft being the bottom of the ladder, they're still making enough to just hold out against anyone else. You're not going to see them fold like Sega, not in today's world at all, because they're, like you said, because they're so diverse, they're everywhere.
Well, there's actually comparisons if Microsoft get rid of the Xbox. Comparisons to Sega there, where they're stepping out of the console market to focus on game delivery.
Yeah. Well, I guess the difference there is, like, if Sega fail at making games, there's nothing else in the business to save them, right? Yeah. Whereas Microsoft, they can just get, like, propped up on all the rest of the shit that they do.
Yeah, they make that much money from, like, just business, like, in server infrastructure alone.
Yeah.
They're
they
fine.
drop the word Microsoft and replace it with Xbox then. Like, if Xbox is just the gaming brand.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I just think it's crazy thinking a world where they're playing ball. So, like, if Sony generally just did get on board with it, like, just games everywhere and anywhere, Sony get their exclusives, Nintendo make theirs, you can play Mario on Xbox and Uncharted on Nintendo, like, that could be a future. We just need them to consolidate more.
Yeah. Well, while we're still on Game Pass, it's looking like Microsoft are going to expand Game Pass, or at least the Friends and Family plan, to 6 more countries, including, when I find the list, into Chile, Hungary, Israel, New Zealand, and South Africa and Sweden. So if you live in one of them countries, you like the sound of the like Game Pass Friends and Family bundle, then good news.
Good news.
But let's move on. EA are already prepping for Dead Space 2 and 3 remake. Rob, you interested in Dead Space? Have you jumped into it yet?
Not yet, just because of schedule commitments and things like that. But I'm kind of not surprised by this. I think as soon as they saw number 1 do well, these plans were already kind of in motion. A remake of 3, I'm not sure how that will go down, because that's generally regarded as the kind of the franchise killer. If you want.
Where they kind of really pushed it more to become away from survival horror into more action and put like weird microtransactions in and stuff.
Yeah, so it was less like, it did move away from survival horror, but it was more so the way it moved away from survival horror. So it's like you got like day 1 guns, which just like wrecked everything, like to remove all the. So it was the DLC that removed the not DLC, sorry, like the microtransactions, which removed the survival horror, which is why I think it got such a big backlash.
It was the dark day. I think this is kind of the beginning of the dark era of EA, where they got obsessed with microtransactions and DLC, and stopped trying to make good games. Started trying to make good platforms to sell DLC.
So
if they remade this, would you expect them to tweak 3 the most? Like, just kind of retell, like, because I think you're talking like 6 years minimum until we would see the 3rd entry. You've got to imagine they'd take the sensibilities learned from these 2 remakes and the history of the franchise and how it kind of killed the franchise dead, and take what was good in the game and evolve it into kind of what the perks and benefits. Like, that's the great thing in hindsight. They can genuinely look back and go, look, everyone hated 3 because of X, Y, Z. Let's take it out. Let's tweak it. Let's make the story. And then people who, by the time we get to 3, the audience it's maybe garnered from the first remake. Like, a lot of people I've spoke to, like, I've got a few colleagues at work who've played the remake and they've never played the original. And that's the whole point of reboots and remakes, right? To bring in a new audience as well as the legacy audience too. I think definitely. If 1's done so well for them, 2 seems like a shoe-in bet, and then just make 3 something new that it can be. Like Resident Evil 4 is going to be the same, but slightly different, and it's for the betterment.
Keep the story of 3, remove the microtransactions, and then see where you're at when you've got that, and then try and find a way to work into the sensibilities of the first 2 games, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Make it a bit darker in tone, a bit more survival focused. So maybe you're going, okay, we're going to reduce the amount of bullets available. You can no longer pull out your credit card to buy them, stuff of that nature.
And I've got faith, because as much as I've criticised EA in the past, and we all have, like, the directions they're taking now seem better than the ones they've taken for the past kind of 10 years when it comes to their single-player titles, at least.
I know people criticise EA, and there's a lot of dickheads out there who just want to see them fail. For me, a lot of people who criticise EA because they know what they could be. Like, they're one of the temples, like the pillars of the gaming industry, and you kind of want to see them producing the best games they possibly can. And sometimes that isn't aligned with making the most money they possibly can.
Yeah, definitely.
And eventually they'll obviously want this to lead to, if they can spend the next decade making remakes of 1, 2, and then whatever 3 ends up looking, that if it all goes to plan, that sets them up for a 4th entry, like a brand new entry. But they've made so much money from these. Let's face it, we know when they go back to reboots, it's easy. It's an easy job because you've got the framework there.
Yeah.
So that's like it's such a cost efficient way of getting money in the bank and building like favor for this franchise to then hit us in what 2030 with a Dead Space 4, and everyone would be like, oh my god, the 3 remakes were phenomenal, and it becomes like the Resident Evil loop that we're in now, where it just continues. But I'm all for it. I love it. I haven't played a Dead Space game still because I don't want to pay £70 for a remake, but it's on my radar of one I'd love to check out because of how much praise it's garnered.
I have the trilogy, I think, in my Origin library, maybe my Steam library.
They're on Game Pass as well.
I know, on Game Pass. So in free libraries then. But I got them on a Humble Bundle years ago. But then when I realised, I thought it was just going to be like a sci-fi action game. Oh, I'm about that. I was like, when I realised it was survival horror, I was like, I'm not about this. I don't like the tone of this game. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I don't want to play this.
But, not humble anymore.
Do you think, as a side note, do you think Jedi Fallen Order might turn out to be one of the most important games of all time? Because of
for
that.
EA.
When I'm looking at the industry, EA specifically, Jedi Fallen Order is that single-player game. Didn't have any microtransactions, didn't have any DLC. It's the first one in a long time that EA produced, critically and commercial, done great critically and commercially. It's almost the proof to EA that you don't have to do microtransactions to survive. You just need to make good games.
Mm-hmm. Well, just look at tomorrow when we're going to talk about Suicide Squad and how I guarantee if you polled a lot of gamers, I'd reckon it'd be a 90 to 10% split of people would rather just made another Batman single player game instead of whatever Suicide Squad ends up being. And Dead Space and Jedi Fallen Order just shows you that, oh no, gamers want to just play good stories on their own, in their own little bubble, because I don't like to socialise online as much as they think I do. I just don't. Well,
I think there is a clear split. There's some gamers, it's all about the online experience, all about the social aspect of it. And then some gamers go, you know what? I am a bit introverted. What I want to do when I'm playing a game is not speak to people, to just get fully lost and fully immersed in the world. When I'm playing a game online, I'm not fully immersed in what's going on. Like when we've been playing Halo, Chris, I'm not fully on top of every single story beat that's going on because I'm hanging out with you as we're playing. I'm enjoying it as a different way. But there's some games where I'm just like, actually, no, like with Hogwarts, I just want to get lost in this world.
Yeah, if Hogwarts had like loads of like random characters like new bot 532 running around going, oh look at over like every few seconds, and I'm just like, I'm trying to like read what this person's saying, solve this mystery, do this puzzle, and they're just dicking around in the background. It does. There is a certain cadence that's ruined by the multiplayer experience, and yeah, I completely get you, Richie. Like Halo, even though we're playing Halo at the moment, it's very story like the first one. You are not as involved in it, and yeah, there are definitely two camps. And again, you can ping back and forth between wanting a little bit of this one week and a little bit of that the next week, but it just shows you there's money to be had there, and it's so great to see EA and hopefully Ubisoft. Like I'm hoping Ubisoft has another resurgence. Like Skull and Bones is gonna do terrible. Extraction did terrible. They need to hone in on what does well, and we're gonna see the Assassin's Creed single player in a few months' time. Hopefully refocus that. Splinter Cell could be that exact same thing when that gets made, and obviously they can have their other multiplayer stuff as well, like the Crew and Siege and that. But yeah, you can't just ditch everything and go all in multiplayer because it's a risky business to be in.
I'm at a point where, for me, I'd rather than go full multiplayer or full single player. And this kind of, when like you mentioned Suicide Squad, it feels like something that's half in, like 1 foot in multiplayer, 1 foot in single player, and it's like, I think when you play multiplayer, the story often gets lost, and when you play in single player, the multiplayer game aspects just don't work as well. So it's
all I'd have to say on that is God of War, 12 million copies sold, Game of the Year, Elden Ring, 20 million copies sold. Game of the year, a lot of places. Hogwarts Legacy, been out less than a month, 12 million copies sold. One thing in common, all single player.
Yeah. They sell.
It's
as long as you do
literally
it well
the proof
enough.
there. Jedi Survivor is going to sell shit tons of copies.
Oh, God. I think Jedi Survivor is probably closer to Elden Ring than Hogwarts Legacy in sales.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah. Although I think Hogwarts Legacy might have a bit of a longer trail because I think there's probably a lot of people like a bit cold on it going in, like I was, until you two sold me on it. And I was like, thank you for that. Very much thank you for that. I am glad that you convinced me. Anyway, let's sticking with EA on that. Unless you want something to add, Chris?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Sticking with EA, Battlefield. EA are working on this exclusive Battlefield single-player campaign with a new team.
And so there should be after the previous conversation. It makes sense. Like I think Rob, what you were saying about Battlefield, like Battlefield 1 was fantastic, more so for the vignette stories. Like war is all over the place in these games. Like that's what it's centered around. But you can only rehash World War II and Vietnam and all this over and over again. But if you give me special stories about characters that I actually care about in these little short, sweet single-player bits, then yeah, I'd love it. And I think Battlefield has struggled a lot to kind of find its identity. And like, what does it mean to be a Battlefield game? And they unfortunately tried to dabble in the Battle Royale world and massive open player. And for better or for worse, Call of Duty just seemingly is doing it better. And it's got lost in the mix, I think, because Apex has done so well too. This was EA's kind of primary shooter, like RIP Medal of Honor. But like, what does Battlefield even mean nowadays? And I think they need to kind of refine what it looks like, because 2042 did not do this franchise any favours.
No, not at all. And the shameful thing is, like, a great campaign could have been the thing that made 2042. But now I think it's just a bit too late, and it's a bit kind of beyond the point where it can be saved, which is a real shame because, as I was talking about in before, like, I'm a huge Battlefield fan, and it's a shame to see where the franchise is, unfortunately.
It just feels like it's one of them game franchises where they kind of almost needs to reinvent itself so it doesn't feel like just a Call of Duty clone anymore. Yeah, I think it's almost like if you're too close to Call of Duty, then you might as well just go play Call of Duty now. I think that's how much Call of Duty has just dominated that part of the industry. So they need to do something that sets them apart so that it can coexist and not just
I think coexist is the key word there. Like, it's the fight between them two titles is over. They have to figure out what comes next.
And to be honest, I think it's just I think the first-person shooter genre is due for a good overhaul mechanically. Because if you look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare, like Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 2, where Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2's remake is, mechanically, there's not a lot changed over the years. I mean, they've hit a formula that works, but it's not working for Battlefield anymore. So maybe they try and find a way to change things up. Like, make it... You know how, like, Rainbow Six Siege feels different to other first-person shooters? Because it is very much more... It's more precise, more tactical. Maybe they need to find something else. Just find a way to make it feel different, to find its audience again.
Yeah, it needs to. Because I think we covered it a few episodes ago that I think more people were playing Battlefield 5 and 1 than they were 2042 on Steam's concurrent players, which, if that's your most recent one, it's doing worse than your games that are a few years old. There's clearly something missing. And I think, Rob saying a campaign could have elevated it to be that. You just need more than just the multiplayer, don't you? Otherwise, people start just thinking, well, this should just be a free-to-play multiplayer, like Warzone is.
Yeah.
Or Apex is. And if you're not getting your value in it, then already you're off on the wrong foot to start with. Whereas the story could really bring something unique to the franchise to give it an identity. You could have characters that you can relate to. So it's mad with all these games. It always baffles me that we never go back to the same characters. Like, why have we not got a Battlefield where the following game is tied to the same characters in the same locations?
With Call of Duty.
Yeah. But it always seems like they have to wipe the entire slate clean and start again. Like, there's no continuity. I keep saying it with Assassin's Creed. As much as I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan, how have we not got a sequel to any of these characters? Like, the protagonists are usually well favoured. Cassandra and Alexios and stuff, and even before that in the other games, Black Flag was phenomenally received, and yet we never saw the continuation of his story. He's just done, left to rot in time, and we get a Skull and Bones game that's similar but not, whereas he could have been the protagonist in Skull and Bones, and we could have had a campaign around Edward Kenway, and yet, no, we'll have a generic person installed, start again from scratch. It's
even like
weird.
the weakest protagonists in Assassin's Creed, like I'd say probably Connors would take that title, I guess. Like, even there's more to tell in his story as well, like, which you just never get access to.
Yeah, go back to a familiar world.
I think
give us
with
a similar
Assassin's
character.
Creed, part of the reason is they're probably just inundated with ideas of where they could go with that franchise, what new environments would tell. So, like, we know they're finally doing, like, feudal Japan. So it's like there's stuff like that. Well, actually, we could continue Connor, but we kind of think we've got this idea for a story in revolutionary France, and then Victorian London.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably just like we've got so much, like, pick an era of time somewhere in the world, and there'll be an interesting story to tell that you can tell in Assassin's Creed franchise.
Undoubtedly, it changes
So
things, but when you look back at certain things, like, let's face it, one of the most revered Assassin's Creed things of all time is the Ezio collection. And why is it that? Because you've got 3 games around one protagonist. It continues the story.
I also think it's the most Assassin's Creed's ever been. It got the weird jankiness of the first game with Altair was kind of resolved. It finally really found its footing with the second entry with Ezio. And then you had a great cast of characters, but it kind of had its a unique identity where it's still an Assassin's game and it hadn't been evolved into like an open world action RPG, which is where the franchise sits now. Which is why I think Mirage could possibly be the best game in the franchise coming. If it's like finding that middle ground between the traditional format and the newer format, where stealth it's more of an Assassin's game, I think it could be fantastic. But I mean, that isn't Battlefield, which is what we were currently talking about.
It's stories and single player, I think, is the focus. If you want to find an identity, you need something to center it around, and without a protagonist or without a through line story, it's always going to be lost, because then it just becomes multiplayer maps, generic character classes, generic weapons that we've seen infinite times in video games now. They always branch out to, like, we'll do something futuristic, and we get like little laser elements, or we go back in time, we have old DAS guns that aren't actually that fun because they take an age to reload. And you need that middle, like, story to kind of connect, like, the connective tissue of the whole thing to give the game its identity, and Battlefield's been missing that since Battlefield 1 for me.
Yeah. Shall we talk about some games coming to Game Pass? Well,
yes.
Coming to Xbox. Some of them are coming to Game Pass. I'm not sure on some of the others, because we have quite a lot of games dropping this week for the effectively the first week of March.
It's not started. It's not stopped since this year. In fact, this is going to be the cadence for 2023. I feel.
So what I'll do is I'll start just going through the list, and if there's a game you want to jump into a bit more, we can stop and talk about it. So starting with February the 28th, we have Brock the Investigator. Why do I think this is a U game, Chris? I think it's because it's got gator in the name.
Maybe.
Yeah, and you play as like an alligator.
Yeah, that's the only thing, but I feel like that's at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's just the title.
Be a great game.
No. Also, 28th of February, we have Destiny 2 Lightfall coming. Fern Bus Simulator.
What even does that mean?
Those are just words.
What is a fern bus? Is it?
I actually don't know. All right, I'm going to read the description.
Is it a brand? Fern bus?
It doesn't seem like DLC. It seems like just a game on its own right.
Experience the world of coaches on the highways and country roads of Europe in over 100 cities and more than 500 kilometres of recreated routes.
50,000 kilometres. Not 500.
Drive the Man Lions coach, faithfully recreating cooperation with Flixbus safely and on time to Europe's bus stations. Face challenges like roadworks, traffic jams and accidents to stay on schedule. Check in passengers and sell tickets. I have no idea.
This is far too close to real life for a game.
I'm sure our friend Lee will jump into this.
Oh yeah, simulation central.
Yeah.
The challenge
Also,
is
we
like
have-
road work and traffic jams and accidents.
Hey, after your daily commute, are you feeling stressed out? Do you want to sit down and sit in a traffic jam for a bit?
In an even bigger vehicle than they used to normally.
Yeah. But it'd be somewhere you 50,000 kilometres of recreated routes.
500,000.
You know, to be honest, I could see just the appeal of just these sort of games as just a complete time sink. Like,
You don't gain anything for it really, but
yeah.
yeah, therapeutic if anything.
Yeah. February 28th, Scars Above. 1st of March,
This looked quite interesting to me. I think I might jump into this.
Yeah. A colossal enigmatic alien structure appears in Earth's orbit and stuns the entire world. Humanity names it the Metahedron. A team of scientists and engineers are sent to investigate, but things don't go as planned.
Yeah, I think it just seems a bit kind of sci-fi mystery, which is the thing I'm kind of most drawn to.
This is the game, Richie, we've seen at a few showcases over the last few years. I think it was actually at that terrible Koch Media one we spoke about, hosted by Prime Matter, and it was the one of the few saving graces where it's like kind of Tomb Raider meets Returnal.
This is
in a weird way.
Well. This is new. Yeah.
Looks great. I'm with Rob on that one. I think it's intriguing enough to definitely check out, and the fact it's free. It's one of those perfect Game Pass titles, I think.
Yeah. It's Prime Matter. I forgot about that game. March the 1st, we have Bendy and the Dark Rival. So this entire list is this week.
That's mad.
It's insane, right?
Again, there's no guarantees these are coming to Game Pass. Some of them don't even say what console they're coming to. Some say the Xbox S and Smart Delivery. Some of them don't. We have Leap coming March the 1st. Iris and the Giant coming March the 2nd. Jurassic Pinball coming March the 2nd.
Of course.
Meg's Monster, March the 2nd. Railway Island, March the 2nd.
Dear me.
Venaris Tactics, March the 2nd. Alterity Experience, March the 3rd.
I mean, they're not all going to be hit bangers, right?
No. Escape First Free, March the 3rd.
Well, I don't even remember.
Have you played Escape First 1 or 2? Or?
No.
I don't know.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Why is the first in the artwork got a 1?
Because it's the first
for the eye.
instead of an eye.
But that it doesn't impact the word first at all by having the 1 in there, because it's the third entry in the game.
You and your friends are having a reunion party, wanting to relive the good old days. You decide to visit your old school, which has since been abandoned. At first, it's all fun and games, remembering the past. However, there's one event you all chose to forget and we forced to confront now.
Wow.
Oh,
can we all agree if we want to
shit in the pool, isn't it?
Can we all agree if we want to relive the old days, we just go to the pub?
Yeah.
That's what pubs are for.
Yeah.
We have Gunman Tales coming March the 3rd. The Smile Alchemist coming March the 3rd. And Warlong Fallen Dynasty coming March the 3rd. Which is coming to Game Pass.
Yeah. This one's for Rob and me, this one. Yeah. All over this. Relive the romance of the Three Kingdoms. I watched a trailer for this because I was telling my brother about it, because my brother's a huge Dynasty Warriors fan as well, and it's his birthday's on March the 1st, so it was like, this is like the perfect birthday present, albeit 2 days late to get you. And he'd never heard anything of it. Got up a trailer, and as soon as it started showcasing like the art style, and I was like, it's basically Dynasty Warriors meets kind of like Elden Ring, essentially. And he was as soon as he saw like the Guan Yu Zhang Fei square off and the creatures in the world, and he was like, and this graphically looks better than any Dynasty Warriors game we've had before as well. And it's Koei Tecmo, so it's the same people, so it's going to have a lot of kind of similar beats. I'm looking forward to this one. It's I can't believe how quick it's came round, but it's free on Game Pass. It's like, fuck yeah, let's get it.
It's also crazy just how it's like, oh yeah, we've been doing, what's Dynasty Warriors up to now, like 8 or
9, I think. 10 will be the next entry.
Yeah, and it took them this long to think, wait a second, let's just do a new type of game for this like massive, amazing, like, it's not franchise, it's just like because I assume they don't own the exclusive rights to it, because it's
just like retelling like the story of King Arthur or something like that. It's royalty free story, but Koei Tecmo seem to be the only ones willing to make games based on this legacy and this story. And I
mean, actually, who's who are the people who make the Total War games? I can't remember the name now. But they did a Three Kingdoms.
Amplitude, Sega.
It's Sega
Publishing, isn't it?
Sega something, yeah. But they did a Three Kingdoms game, which was terrible. But yeah,
Warland's
I'm very much looking forward to it.
It's one of them weird games where I look at it, because it's pretty much on the dock every single week at the moment, because it seems like every single week they're dropping a new trailer or some new info, and most weeks we don't get to it because it's only like a small little bit. But I think it's one of them, because when I listen to other podcasts, you don't really hear much about it. I was thinking, well, of just people just not paying much attention to this game, but then it's like, I think I've just answered my own question, and like, well, most weeks I have it in the show notes, then it gets cut for time.
Maybe it's just mine and Chris's like exceptionally high kind of fandom for Dynasty Warriors, which is fueling it on this show.
Yeah. There is also the element that it's from the same people who made like Neo, which is like so well revered. And I think it's that combination of new world, the hype that the Elden Ring style has gotten, mixed with his story, and it's kind of almost like coming to a forefront of multiple kind of just positive vibes, almost like coming together at a crescendo point. When, in the fact that it's free on Game Pass, I think this game's going to get a lot of hype, probably the biggest hype between now and maybe Jedi Survivor coming out. I don't think there's actually much on the slate after this up until Survivor. Resident Evil 4, I guess, maybe. Different type of game, though. But
I think this is a game we're talking about in December on the run-up to the Game Awards. I don't know whether it'll be in the Game of the Year category, because we do have things like like Jedi Survivor coming up this year. And Sony truly have something in the works.
I think it can go one or two ways. I think it'll be swept under the carpet, or it'll do gangbusters for them.
Yeah, I think I've got a feeling this will be at least in some of the categories. I just have a sneaking feeling that this is going to be a fantastic game. I hope I'm right.
I hope I'm right. Me and Rob have been waiting for this type of game for like 20 years.
Right?
20 years now. Like, Dynasty Warriors is great, but it definitely follows the same style and approach to a video game every single time it launches one. Hopefully this will just like breach that into a different genre, but with the same characters and story. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you think this could be the game that gets you into Soulsborne titles, Chris?
I really do. It's got enough. Like, I've dabbled and umdenad prior to Christmas about, do I get Elden Ring when it's on sale? Do I go? Because again, 20 million copies sold, Game of the Year awards. Like, it must be doing something right. Like, I must be able, as a gamer, to get past that difficulty spike to enjoy it for what it is. But then limitations of time is a big thing. But this is free, Game Pass, day one. And like Rob said, maybe it being fueled by our love of all things Dynasty Warriors and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Yeah, could be down for it.
Anything to add, Rob, before we wrap up?
Exactly the same. I will be eagerly anticipating this game.
As am I, but that's all we have time for this week. If you've liked the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel or your podcast feed of choice with notifications turned on. If you want to join the conversation any further, let us know in the comments below, and we also have a Discord. Links are in the description. Thank you very much for watching. My name's been Richie.
I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
Game on.